microphones.
Okay, let me go backwards. Take the last two questions and work backwards to Professor Bhatt and Professor Shivaramkrishnan's queries. Begin with experience. I refrain from actually trying to define the term or saying anything about it. I don't think that's a good way to actually understand what that is. I wanted its resonance to emerge slowly, either through my paper, or preferably when you read Gandhi and perhaps go back to some of the writings that Balu has done. But this is not to sort of say that I'm not going to have a response. Gandhi belonged to what we think of as the Anubhavi tradition. So when I say experience, I mean Anubhava in Canada. And I'm not implying that by switching the terms from English to Kannada, we are achieving an illumination. We're not. And that in fact is one of the response to both Krishna Bhatt and Shivaramkrishnan too. That the point was not to worry about Gandhi's terminology too much. True, terminologies are important. I mean, they become a hindrance sometimes. But the root cause, as you put it, is not terminological. I mean, it's not because we use the word religion that we ended up with the problem that we are having. It is because, as Gandhi says, we've become irreligious. And the thing is to try and understand what that means, not to understand the term irreligion or look for substitution of it. So, similarly, when you simply substitute dharma and say that it is a progress of a kind. When you say that otherwise that what Jacob was citing, that when Gandhi's refusal to separate religion and dharma, from a secularist eye looks like some anti-secular principle. But if you put the right Indian words, quite clearly, it really begins to say something. So that's a progress. But that's not entirely what we're trying to do either. I mean, we're trying to go because the task is something even more daunting than simply finding the right word. Because we sort of deceive ourselves if we think that we actually understand, these terms, whether they come from any of the Indian languages, Hindi, Kannada or Sanskrit. I mean, otherwise you'd have to say that Kannada literary critics are the greatest wise men in the world because they use Sanskrit terms all the time they're coining terms all the time. But we don't. That even Anubhava when I said. But let me try to give you some hint of what I mean. See, usually we think of experience as some kind of subjective experience, right? Usually under the influence of perhaps literary criticism or reading too much of the modern novel, we think of introspection, going deep into one's psyche and dredging up all those painful memories and so on. But this is precisely not what I or Gandhi or Indian tradition talked about when they talked about reflection on experience. That's why I began today's talk with saying something about the seminar and saying that sometimes we can ask this question whether there's experience present in the seminar. Because what often happens is that we come with our preoccupation, we come with our obsessions, right? And exchanging that is not having experience. Experience happens, and this is a glimpse that I want to give and stop so that you can think further with this idea. Suppose an insight emerges. And what happens when an insight emerges? Cognitively we connect to something. And I think Gandhi was hinting that is also an ethical act. There is something there that I see, and there is something that you see. It is not bound by my obsessions, my preoccupations. And that is experience. At least it's a glimpse of experience. That's what we try to. That's why I said when we begin by saying that if experience was not present in the seminar, or generally it's not, or that university today is not a site of learning for us, it is this kind of a thing we have in mind. That we want to develop that. And when Gandhi was saying that, when I said that Gandhi sets up sites of ethical learning, this is what, not not experience in the sense of, they are privileged, they're excluded from this privilege or that privilege. But that the tradition of learning here, tradition of reflecting on experience, is really to open up that sort of a space of insight, if you like, which as something that we can share. Whereas I think the instance that you gave is precisely bringing your subjectivity to the foreground. It is actually excluding experience, occluding experience. And that when what happens with modern politics, and that's why I was trying to say why modern politics might be a domain where cognitive enslavement is getting reproduced, is precisely because of this. That it is now structuring us, forcing us in this direction where we think that is what is of significance, whereas that is not what is of significance. So in that sense, if Kuvempu and Ambedkar did say that they are really, Gandhi would disagree with them completely. And that's precisely one of the deeper bases on which Gandhi objected to Bonaparte. It was not. People took him to be saying some very narrowly, self-construed, self-interest point of view, but it's not. So that is a sense in which I want to begin this reflection, and that's why again to third party's question. See, when I said that, I was not saying that Gandhi is superficial. I was saying that sometimes his characterization is so frank, which we won't do it now. We won't say that Indian civilization is superior, or it's based on self-control and West was based on self-indulgence and so on. But Gandhi was. There is reason for us to try and understand what was Gandhi trying to say when he said these things. And he was definitely not looking for an alternative, right? There is this passage in Swaraj where he says that, look, people criticize us for saying that you are ignorant people, you don't change, that you are stagnating, and so on. And there is a remarkable line that he says, right? It says that what we have tested and found true on the anvil of experience, we dare not change. And he says that what you think of as criticism is really our merit. That the profound point is, again, this is something, as I said, you asked for whether we need to develop a critique of his critique. No, first we need to understand what that critique was. And I'm saying that we are just at this stage where we're trying to flesh out, not only with Gandhi's own writings, but as I said, from the kind of work that we are doing, inspired by Balu's Heathen, that book Heathen, and where we're trying to figure out whether we can really try to understand what is it that Gandhi is saying when he says that Western civilization is inherently violent. It is not simply, this is not condemning of the civilization, right? It has to be a cognitively meaningful statement. So we need to understand it in a deeper sense. So that is a task. It is not, we not accomplished it. It is not to rest assured that that Gandhi said it and this must be right. Obviously, that's not what I'm advocating. So that's.
Because there's an immediate response, I'll first give the word to Balu, then we'll come to Jacob, and then we'll have a last question for you.
I just want to clarify. I have a couple of questions, but I'll raise them later. They asked what is experience. If you use a Kannada word, which is what is meant here, anubhava, it literally translates itself as an appropriate way of being in the world, of course. But appropriate to what? Well, appropriate to the objects, the events, the processes you come across. Right? How do you become appropriate, and what exactly is that appropriateness consist of? That is precisely where you have to start thinking. And such that when it progresses, you become you get anubhava, where you resonate appropriately as well to the world. So anubhava, therefore to have it, you need to think already, because you have to think about appropriate ways of being in the world. So one of the characteristic properties of Indian traditions is to inculcate anubhava, that's experience.